Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Behind the Lava. I'm your host, Bigfoot Fowler. I'm joined by the usual suspects, Prez Michael Tan, the one and only Ulupo'o Art, and Johnny, the trucker with the shades. All right, this episode is brought to you by Matai Watches. Go and get you that nice looking slick black edition. Celebrate your people and your culture. Go to behindthelavamerch.com. Get yours now. So tonight's episode, before we get into it, let me put this disclaimer out. None of us are historians or that favorite child that parents, grandparents, aunties, and uncles would tell, the stories to and trust us to pass that on to future generations. I mean, yes, they would trust us with, advice for our families, but as far as traditions and things, not so much. You won't find us on The Giver or anything. But anyways, tonight we're going to be speaking on myths and legends, not just in our Polynesian culture and the Pacific Islander culture, but just all across the board. And to kick us off, we're going to start with Spencer. Go ahead, man. What you got for us?
Oh, shoot. All right. Well, mine's going to be kind of a jumbled mess because I'm just kind of going back in my mind and just recalling some of the fun stuff we went through growing up. So when I was 13, we moved to Tropic, Utah, by Bryce Valley. Wonderful place. I love growing up there. But over the years, so we didn't even live like right in town. We lived kind of out of town, and me and our neighbors, so it was me and my brother Joe and our neighbors, which were like maybe a mile away or whatever. We just walked back and forth between the lands, and that was our best friends Buzz and Daniel. And so there's a lot of acreage between us and behind us. So we were like right in the southern Utah mountains and stuff. And one day we're walking around. It'd been raining recently, and we see this weird looking footprint. And it's maybe it was a bear, maybe it was something else, but this thing looked huge. And we were like just weirded out by this odd, like big shape. And the footprint seemed bigger than my foot, which back then I was probably wearing like size 10, size 11 shoes or whatever. And it had these weird spikes coming out, didn't look like traditional bear claws. This is from a guy who's obviously not a professional tracker, and I was a teenager at the time. But over time, if you asked me or Joe or either of our friends, we had a Bigfoot running around the mountains back then. But, there were other, sightings. Like sometimes my friend Buzz would come up and he'd be like, oh, hey, I was walking home and I heard this crazy shrill screaming coming out of the woods. And it was just like bone chilling. And then I swear he would tell us how he saw a big furry thing that was like breaking through the trees and clearing paths and things like that. And then one time I'm sleeping and I heard this loud thunk on my roof. And then it's just and the next day I went out and I found weird tracks out back, but it was extra muddy. So the tracks were smeared and, so it couldn't quite make sense of the shape. But anyways, I remembered I was in a summer program called Upward Bound, where you could go to the college campus at Southern Utah University as a high school student on summer break. You could stay at you got to live in the dorms for 6 weeks, and then you got to take a few college courses. The whole idea was to give kids a feel for college life, to incentivize them to want to go to college after high school. And the cool thing about that is you got to meet up with a lot of cool kids from other schools, from not just Utah, but we had some kids from Nevada and other states. And we had a bunch of Navajo kids in that program. And so like I think half the students in that program were Navajo. And it was really fun getting to know them and talk to them and understand their culture. I remember telling these stories to some of them, and they were telling me that's probably not, maybe it's a Bigfoot, but what we would call that is the Yanni, or the Yanni. Sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, or what some people call the Skinwalker. And so after that, I started digging into the lore of the Skinwalker, and they're like, yeah, it's this creature that sometimes it takes the form of a human, sometimes it takes the form of a bear or a wolf or something like that. And so I adopted that for my take on what was going on in the ranch behind our house. And so, it was a fun time, and we had a bunch of funny little stories, and there were people in town that each had their own little mystery run in with some mysterious creature. But I'm willing to also look back nowadays and think, maybe I was just we were some bored kids with some active imaginations, that live in the middle of nowhere. But you ask me, my 18-year-old self, what's going on? I'll tell you, it's the Skinwalker. Skinwalker was out there. So that's my funky story for now.
Would you say that you believe in either the Bigfoot or the Skinwalker, if it exists?
This is the funny thing, because I was talking with, I was on a road trip with an old friend from high school. His name's Casey. Awesome guy. And he was digging these stories up. But I kind of disappointed him because I'm a much more cynical person in my older age, where I actually am much less prone to believe in any of this. And so that's why I kind of have the disclaimer that, I was probably just a teenager with an overactive imagination, and maybe it really was just a bear. Could have been that thunk on my roof. It really could have been just a mountain lion that was sniffing around and then ran off because it heard my dogs or something like that. But so right now, I would say no, because I like to pretend that I'm more science-based or whatnot nowadays. And so I don't believe in a Bigfoot, because there really is no evidence for one yet. We get fuzzy videos and wacky footprint plasters, but, a lot of those footprints are, they're easily faked. And then I just need, I'm really more evidence based on a lot of stuff. And, and that I'm only willing to bend on that in the realm of my religion. That's kind of the only time I make that leap. And so that's why I also get extra careful about saying I believe in whatever, because to me, that if I'm willing to believe on anything not based on fact, then all this other stuff becomes just as credible as my actual religion, which I hold dear to my heart. So that's why I'm a little less loose about applying that to everything, every little story. So that as of now, no, I don't. But if somebody proved to me that one actually exists and that I'm wrong, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to eat my words. I'd love to know there's actually a Bigfoot out there. But right now, I don't really buy it.
Don't you find it interesting that every time there's a sighting, it's always like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monster, it's always like a blurry photo or a blurry video from far away. And like even now when they say, oh, there's a new sighting, it's still blurry. Like, come on, man, we got 4K recording, we got drones flying in the air. How do you not see it? Infrared. It's some dude in a suit. It's always some dude in a suit.
Right. And the thing with animals, it's like, it's not so much just, it's not so much just, did you find the actual animal? It's like, it's all the signs that an animal takes to leave behind. It's not just, you're talking droppings, talking about nests. You're talking about, there's lots of sign for deer. There's lots of sign for wolves and coyotes. What is the sign for Sasquatch? It's like, it's, and people will go back and forth. And I know there's a lot of cryptozoologist enthusiasts that are going to try, start pushing stuff at me. And I'm like, all right, sure, whatever.
You were mentioning roofs. Do you guys believe that houses have their own spirit? Because I've lived in many places, and I'm beginning to think that every house or every place has their own unique aura. Like especially the house that I live in. Yeah, it squeaks when you step on it. Like everything squeaks when you're on the second floor, stepping on the floor, and it's amplified when you're on the, I think it's called a basement. It's like a split level housing. So
yeah, it'd be a basement.
Yeah, But I think every house has their own personality. Like when you're lying there sleeping, you'll hear things like up the pipe creaking, and it's different things. But anyways, I'm gonna tell you guys about my village. So I'm from the village of Aua, AUA. That's my ville in American Samoa, and Aua is known as Malaeopaepaeulupo'o. So Malay means field, Paepaeulupo'o means stacked skulls, or if you put it together, it'll be field of skulls. So there's two legends, two theories of why this field got the name Paepaeulupo'o. So back in the day, there was a chief called Tuife'ai. So he required human sacrifices as his everyday meal. So people would offer humans to him so that he could eat. So it was basically cannibalism back in the day. And it just happened that, every time he ate a human, he would just throw the skulls, and that's how, the skulls started to stack, and, they built a wall to kind of run it along the border of the village so that it'll signify and indicate to others not to approach the village. So that's one of the theory, is one of the chiefs was a cannibal, and the other one was they had little wars back then between the villages in Tutuila in American Samoa. And every warrior that was killed in the village of Aua, they would cut off or sever their heads, and then the heads would be scattered around the field. Same thing, it'll signify and warn others not to come into the village. So that's how our village, Aua, gained that name, Paepaeulupo'o, which basically means field of skulls. And yeah, it's to intimidate, the respective villages when they get into fights and all that. So that's my village, of my amazing village. My story, my legend of my amazing village that eats people.
What about your house? Just out of curiosity for you homeowners, did you guys do any research on, past owners of that land or house where you live, or just that neighborhood? Any funky things that went down?
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is when I moved here, I kind of did a little Google. Nothing pulled up, because how nothing is tracked on the internet, or nothing was recorded. So it's difficult to even track these old houses, because I live in a very old house, a very sturdy house, and I love my house. You hear that, house? I love you. So
we all seen Monster House, so you better not take no chances, huh?
But yeah, I don't think my house is haunted, but yeah, it has its own personality. The pipes creaking, the floors, and all that goodness.
When the pipes creak, though, is that usually like on a Taco Tuesday night or something?
I think that's when it's amplified, is like on a Taco Tuesday, or when I have something very spicy. Yeah, that's when the sound is very amplified.
It's all them hot pot nights. You can get that hot broth.
Yep.
No, I think it was the same for me. I remember when we put in an offer for this home. My wife, did the whole, instead of researching, the records, the home records and everything like that, she goes to the trusty dusty Facebook, pulled up the current owners at the time and looked at their Facebook profiles. And I would swear she almost pulled the plug on it completely on her own, because he had a picture of him in the kitchen. Looked like he had just gone duck hunting, and he had a whole bunch of ducks in the sink. And he's like, "It's in the sink. It's infected. We can't live in there knowing that there's dead ducks in the sink," and all this stuff. And I'm like, "Nah, it's fine." And then I'm over here roasting pigs in the backyard, gutting and cleaning them back there. So it was like no different anyways. But no, it's a good house.
When I was young and I saw this, Unsolved Mysteries. Back in the day when I was very young,
that intro for that show.
they showed the Mothman episode, and it's pretty old episode when I was very young, and I used to be very scared of that. Something flying out at me at night and grabbing me and taking me up. That was a scary episode for me when I was very, very young. The Mothman, but I kind of interpreted it into my own way back in the island, like some sort of flying creature is gonna come and take me.
And that's why we're heavier nowadays, to avoid being captured by the Mothman.
Yeah, good luck, Mothman.
Shout out real quick to those awesome old shows, Unsolved Mysteries, or my jam was Sightings. I don't know if you remember Sightings, but it's just like all this supernatural
Murder
stuff.
She Wrote.
Murder She Wrote. But like, talking about like like the Mothman or Sasquatch or UFO sightings, haunted houses. I love those shows when I was younger, but it really fed into me buying into all of it. I believe I was so superstitious back in the day. Yeah, I remember I was this scared the crap out of me when I went to watch the movie The Grudge. Like, I don't know if you ever saw The Grudge. Like, which a lot of people would be like, "Oh, that ain't nothing. Yeah, The Ring was better," or the Japanese the Japanese version was better. The American one was watered down. It's like, all right, whatever. It's like that movie scared the crap out of me, but it's because I really believed in all that stuff, and I believed that somehow I was going to be haunted. And so it's funny because I was 18, so I was into adulthood when I actually saw that. I go to basic training a few months later, and I'm still having bad dreams about The Grudge in basic training. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, all this stuff going on, all the stuff that I have to worry about. I'm still worried about this freaking ghost coming up the stairwell. But no, I love those shows. I used to be so superstitious. Like I said, I'm skeptical nowadays, but there's a time in my life where I bought into all that.
Nah, it was It. Stephen King's It for me. I don't even watch horror flicks anymore just because of that movie. I watched it when I was a kid.
That's funny because I was about to mention Stephen King, his Children of the Corn,
Children of the Corn, The Shining. All of those. But it was It. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Yeah, well, that's the one.
Man. Yeah, I could have public showers after It. Nope. Locker room. Nope. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird because they don't have gutters. They don't have the original one. But that, like, you know how like in the movie he's got the gutters, the rain gutter, and it goes into in Samoa we didn't have those because I grew up in Samoa, but we used to make I don't know if you remember this, Michael, but we used to take soda cans and we would cut them up and open up the aluminum and make like little boats with a little sail on there. And we always used to find like a little alvaivai that's cafe during the rain.
That's how poor we were.
Yeah, and so we'd make these little boats and we'd race them down the anything that water is flowing when it's raining. And that was how, but it was like, to me, the kid's sailing his boat down the gutter. And I was like, but we don't have gutters or curbs or that sort. And so, yeah, but ever since then, I hated horror flicks. Like It did it for me. That what was the other one? Pet Cemetery, like that one. Pet Cemetery. Cujo, Puppet Master, Hellraiser.
The thing is, after The Grudge, like that kind of it actually did the opposite to me. Where instead of being like creeped out going into scary movies, now I just didn't care anymore. It's like, did you ever see that episode of South Park where Cartman, like he felt like he burnt out his funny bone or something like that? Like he laughed at a joke so hard that nothing would ever be funny like ever again, and so he's like bummed out because he couldn't laugh at anything anymore. I was like, to me, that's what happened when I saw The Grudge. After that, I could watch any scary movie, and I'm like, I'll have fun watching it, but I don't get nervous leaving it no more. Like I just burned out my horror bone.
Oh, have you guys seen 13 Ghosts? That movie 13 Ghosts.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That freaked me out too.
That was a really good. Holy cow, that was an old one too. 13 Ghosts.
There's a long period of time during the 2000s when they just kept coming out with corny horror movies. I was just watching it and be like, what is this? And then I get mad when we're kicking it with the boys, red box days. Like, oh yeah, let's get a horror movie. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be dumb. Like, no, it's not. And then sure enough, you know, being mad watching this corny movie hung over, like, you're not picking red box again.
What was that low budget movie that made a crap load of money? The horror. It was kind of like the Blair Witch
Paranormal
Project.
Activity.
Yeah. I think that first one was the first real jump scare in a long time since The Ring for me. Because even then I would watch it occasionally, especially when everybody else, hey, let's watch to get scared. And I'm like, nah. Like, I'm trying to act like I'm cool. Like, I'm not scared of that. I'm not jumping. But like deep down, I'm like, my heart's racing. Like, I hate scary movies. I can't stand it. And so it was just always like that ever since.
Now, speaking of ghosts, there's something important that you got to know about before we become ghosts. So ask yourself, if I were to die tonight, would my family struggle to take just next month's bills, not to mention every month after that? If you answered yes to that question, then life insurance is your best way to help your family be prepared. None of us know when we're going to go back home, and we've all known more than one person that was very young and healthy yet still passed away unexpectedly. Now, the younger you are, the chances are smaller that you pass away before your parents. But are you willing to take that chance with your family's life? If not, then the next thing you need to figure out is how to get the most life insurance possible for the smallest amount of money. Most agents are captive agents selling only their captive agencies options, which are always the most expensive. You need an independent agent like Ray Keller, who started Independent Island Life Insurance Agency specifically to help everyone get the most affordable life insurance possible. He maintains access to every carrier out there and is never beat on price or quality. I mean, how do you beat someone on price or quality when they have access to it all? Short answer, you don't. Many have tried and all have failed. Reach out to Ray Keller at 435-200-4869 or find him on Facebook at Independent Island Life Insurance. Remember, with insurance, you're either early or late, never on time.
Another scary thing I just remembered. You guys remember first watching the movie Jaws and how scary it was? And when the movie Jaws came out, I think it was because I was young at the moment and living on an island. I was suddenly scared to go to the ocean, especially if you're going too deep, because of that movie's Jaws and wondering if there's always a shark in the water.
Not me. Growing up in Samoa, I knew that sharks, you don't mess with them. So I was never afraid of it. I just knew if I, don't go into the deep blue. It's I mean, growing up, my dad always told me that the reason why you won't see great white sharks in the beaches, when we go swimming, is because the reef protects us. It's not deep enough for the sharks to cross. It's a natural barrier, which is true. I mean, we'll get little white tip reef sharks, but those things they'll bite you, but they're not as severing a limb like a great white will in one go. But yeah, no. If there was a devil versus the devil you don't, I know that Jaws is in the water. Don't go over there.
Well, while we're on the topic of sharks, Johnny, tell us about the legend of the turtle and the shark in Waitongi.
Well, I mean, if you grew up in American Samoa, everybody remembers in elementary, once sometime throughout your younger years, you always do a field trip to Waitongi. And we all know, I just grew up knowing the song. I'm not from Waitongi. I'm from Pango. My dad's from Sidi Manua, and my mom is from Pango. But at the time, we lived in Foa'aono when I was a kid, up in Tafuna. But yeah, we used to go out to Waitongi, and we would sing the song. And it's every time you sing, the superstition was if you sing the song, you can look out on the overlook. It's like a little deep cliff, and you can see in the waves a turtle and a shark swimming together. I actually had to Google this and look it up because I knew it was about a mother and daughter, but to get an actual story from people from that village. And the story goes, there was a mother and daughter. She was blind. They were from a village in Sava'i. in Upolu, and there was a famine, and the village didn't have enough, so they were feeding everybody else but her and her daughter. And eventually they got they could smell the umu, the oven, cooking food, and she waited and waited for somebody from the village to bring her and her daughter food. Nobody ever showed up. And so finally, when she was so desperate that her and her daughter decided to just cast their lot with fate and jumped into the ocean. And when they both jumped into the ocean, they transformed into a turtle and a shark. And they swam and swam and swam until they came up into the village of Waitongi, which is in the islands of Tutuila, which is American Samoa. And they transformed back into human beings, and the village accepted them immediately and fed them, and they were taken care of, and then they ended up living their life peacefully out there. And so I think we all know the song, or at least most of us from American Samoa know the song. When you go to Waitongi, it goes, Lau me, whaianga, fasususio tsama. But I'm not going to sing the song because I don't have a good singing voice.
Yeah, and the thing about the song, not anyone can just sing the song and summon the turtle and the shark. Mm-hmm. It's only the village that can summon the turtle and the shark. Yeah. If you go out and sing it, they're not going to show.
There's a YouTube
that'd be
video.
Very tiresome for them.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video.
Back to tell you stop. Hey, stop.
Hey.
Be like Candyman. Be like Candyman. Everyone's just talking in the mirror.
Oh, yeah. I remember Candyman. I was over there doing it too. Like after the third one, I was just like, Candyman. Oh, good times. But yeah, that's one of our more famous ones, this Turtle and the Shark. There's actually a couple of hit songs made out of it too. It's pretty cool.
See, that's cool because I didn't really hear that story, and not speaking the language. I have heard the song, but I had no idea that's what it was about. So that's cool to know.
There's a YouTube video of a bunch of people from the village singing on the pier, and they kind of zoomed in, and you could see a turtle just swimming in the waves, and the shark is just going up and down around it, kind of kisses it and keeps going. It's kind of neat. I mean, they were all singing, and they were like, look, it's right there. So that's pretty cool.
You know what couple didn't get their kiss at the end is a legend of Fatu Mafuti. So Fatu and Futi were lovers, and their love was forbidden in the islands of Manua. So where Johnny came from. So they were scared, or they sailed from Savai'i looking for the islands of Tutuila, and I guess their canoe sank, and they were transformed into these tree-topped islands, which are currently known now as Fatu Mafuti, which is a village, Fatu Mafuti. And Fatu Mafuti is a very small village, and you'll see on the beach 2 little rocks in the ocean, and on both rocks, high school students would like to climb up and plant their high school flags on them when to show their pride in schools, especially when it come during like football season. Like you'll see flags, especially Samoan high school flags, hanging from those. They're not small rocks. They're almost like mountains, little mountains in the ocean.
If you think of that story, because if you've been out to American Samoa and actually see those rock formations, they're like these mini little peaks about the size of a mini skyscraper. But there's one in the front close to the beach, and then there's one behind it a little bit in between the reef line and the other rock formation in front. And they're just right next to each other. It's like one was chasing the other. But if you think of it as them shipwrecking right before shore, and one was a little bit ahead and the other one was behind, and they both died, then they were just stuck there forever, immortalized in those 2 positions. It's actually kind of poetic and sad and amazing at the same time. Plus, one of my best friends from growing up, childhood friends, was from Fatu and Futi. Hey, shout out Frank. Knew that kid since kindergarten all the way to like the 8th grade. But yeah, it's a cool story.
Yeah, and I have a story when I was swimming in Fatu Mafuti when I was very young. I almost drowned there in front of one of those
Dang,
rocks.
does everybody almost drown over there? I almost drowned in Fatu and Futi when I was a kid.
I got caught in one of those little whirlpool things when I was little, and all I remember was like looking up. It was just water, and some girl saved me. But this was when I was like probably 8 or younger, not really knowing how to swim. I just fell off the rock that I was holding on to, got caught in the current, got swept, and like it was a little current whirlpool thing, and I got saved. Thank you to my savior.
See, that was the same way for me. I was probably like 6 or 7, and I was on the rock wall. Water came in, and I kind of just leaned back into the water, into the ocean, and floated. But I was doggy paddling, like my little heart couldn't stop going and going. And I started screaming for my dad, and he's on the thing, on the wall, on the seawall. And he turns around, and luckily the current brought me back in, and I managed to land on the rock and gripped on like for dear life. But yeah, man, I think you're like the third person I've known that has a story of almost drowning in Fatu and Futi. But yeah, that's pretty cool and scary.
Yeah, I've got an almost drowning story, but mine's kind of pathetic when you consider I didn't grow up around no oceans. You know, it's like, how do you drown in the middle of the desert? But you know, me and my cousin Nuffle almost found a way. So just at one of our church members' pools when they were having a pool party, Nuffle told me to jump in the deep end when I couldn't swim, and he's like, jump in and I'll save you. And I jumped in, and Nuffle was true to his word. He jumped in too, but turns out Nuffle didn't know how to swim either. So I popped my head up for air. Then Nuffle's hand reaches up and grabs my head and dunks it down to pull himself up for air. And then we just took turns just dunking each other, trying to get a breath until finally somebody saw, hey, those kids are drowning. So that's my almost drown in the middle of the Mojave Desert story.
That's like freaking Rango. When you find the dead body in the desert, I'm like, he drowned. How do you drown in the desert? Well, at a church function.
Now let me ask this. Do you guys believe in ghosts or spirits?
Neither. I am a man of science. I believe in science. No, I don't believe in ghosts or higher powers. I mean, I acknowledge the possibility of them actually existing. And, I give credit to the notion that, it could be there. But as for me, I choose not to condone it. I don't believe in it. There could be a perfectly logical explanation to explain the unexplained. I know I read in a study written by scientists that we as humans need an explanation. So when the answer is unexplainable, then we have to formulate an answer ourselves. We can't just take the vastness of the universe. We have to find a reason, because that's what we do. And then once we find that reason, and we're saying, ha, told you, that's the reason. So the meme, what was the reason?
Oh, I'm the opposite. I actually do acknowledge the existence of spirits, but I don't believe good or bad. I do believe that there is existence of spirits out there, and there are some things that can't be explained by science, especially if you lived the life that I wouldn't say live the life that I've lived, because I did experience a moment in high school where it made it true for me. So in Samoa High School, there's an old science building where us, the science club, met at one Saturday. So after our cleanup, where we clean up the beach, do our community work, we go to the science club, we kind of hang out. That day, we decided to watch a scary movie. I forgot the name of it. So in the science building, there's no airflow, no wind, no nothing. All the doors were freaking heavy because it's an old building. So a scene from a scary movie came on, and suddenly, right when the scene, the whatever the ghost in the movie said, boo, the doors slammed, and that was weird because there was no one in the building but us, and the door just happened to slam on that scene and like spooked us. So that made me believe that there is something out there that's phenomenal, supernatural. Plus, I do see stuff at night. Back when I was in the islands, there was an old house in Loa Loa covered by a mango tree. It's a very old house that we rented and lived in. I did see some stuff waking up late at night. I saw like lights hovering and all that shenanigans. So especially when I hear stories from my siblings, stuff that my siblings see. So yeah, I do acknowledge that spirits exist, but I wouldn't say they're good or bad. They're just there. Yeah, that's my story and what I actually believe.
Well, in our culture, the belief of the saying, people being possessed, right? There was a girl in my class. She didn't show up for school a couple days, and everybody was like, "What's going on?" Come to find out, rumor around town was she was possessed by a demon, and they were at her home, and she was like going all kinds of whatever. So, I mean, when I was a kid, it used to scare the crap out of me. I was like, oh. And then, one of the boys in my class told me that, like, don't touch girls because you're going to be possessed by a demon because, they're demons. But, you grow up and you realize it's true. All of it. Girls are demons.
Oh, yes.
In a pretty packaging. They're demons in a pretty... I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you remind me of a story because there's a school in far east side called Whangaitua, where there's a lot of possessions of girls, especially because they had this old 2-story buildings and girls just happened to be possessed by demons. So that's probably right, Johnny?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's stories out there about students being possessed by demons and then having to go to the village. What would you call it? Witchcraft.
Monster.
What's a proper name for someone who does like witchcraft, voodoo? What's not really voodoo, but
witchcraft,
exercise.
warlock, wizard,
so, yeah.
Shaman.
Yeah, kind of like shaman. So every village has one that would kind of do that kind of stuff. Exercise, spirits. So that would happen.
Well, for someone who doesn't believe in ghosts, my wife hates this because she is super superstitious. She believes in all of it. She grew up, some of the superstitions, the whole whistling at night, but like even stuff for girls, like don't let your hair out at night or the ghost is going to grab you by the hair. Don't, what do you call it? Don't cross your legs when you're pregnant because you're going to choke the baby. Don't wear necklaces when you're pregnant, anything like that. My dad's coming from Manua. There's everybody knows that Manua's spirits are the strongest in the Pacific Islands. But the closest thing I have to like a ghost story was when I was a little kid. My dad took us out to city to go see my grandparents' family and all that. And there was literally just 2 huts, 2 houses, and there were 2 families living there. We were staying at one of them, and we were there for about a week. And I was a real little kid at the time. And I remember because, during the day we went swimming and the beach was right there. The front yard was all sand going into the beach. And so we'd go swimming and then do some like fishing, scavenging, stuff like that. And my dad was telling me like, he brought the fishing poles. He's like, hey, we're going to go fishing. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to go fishing. My dad's like, yeah, but we're going to go fishing on the muffa on the backside. But he said we were only going to go around 3 to 4 in the morning. That's when the best fish, because my dad likes parrotfish. And he's like, yeah, we're going to go fishing around that time. And so we go, and he's like, so go to sleep early tonight. And when you wake up, I'll wake you up so we can go. And I'm like, all right, don't forget, Dad. Don't forget to wake me up. It was me and my brother. And I remember it was like in the middle of the night, I woke up because I was so excited to go fishing. And so we're sleeping on the fala, on the floor. So we got a mat on the ground, and I'm a little kid. And I'm sleeping next to the window so that the ocean breeze blows in because, you know, there ain't no AC or ceiling fans. I believe there was only one light, and that was the one attached to the main power line, that the one line that came into the village of Sili. And it was, the light was outside, but that light was turned off. And so there was no light inside the house, and we didn't have flashlights. It wasn't muliwila, it was molingao. So we had the gas lamps, the oil lamps. And I was sleeping, or I was laying there, and I could feel somebody waking me up. And I thought, like, oh, what's going on here? And I woke up, and it was the curtains. The curtains was blowing on the wind, and it was just rubbing on me while I was sleeping. So it woke me up. And so I looked over, and my dad was up. He was awake. And I assume at that point it was about 3 or 4 in the morning. And he was getting ready to go fishing, and my mom was up too. And she was like, are you going to wake up J-Boy and Rocky? My family calls me J-Boy. And they're like, are you going to wake up J-Boy and Rocky? And he was like, hold on. And he walks outside. And then I wake up, and I follow him out. And he stops, and he tells me, he's like, hey, what are you doing up? Don't come outside. And I'm like, okay. So then I just stood by the door. And he walks out, and he looks up, and there's no moon. Or no, it was supposed to be no moon. He wanted to go fishing when there was no moon, so the fish can see. Or no, it was the opposite. He wanted to go see when the moon was out, so the fish can see the lure. But there was no moon, and so he was looking, and he's like, "There's supposed to be a moon tonight. What's going on?" And he tells my mom to keep me, and Rocky's still sleeping. Keep us in the house. And I look over on the mountain. He looks over on the mountain to the right side of Sili, and we can see in the woods. There was a light coming down the mountain. It was at the top of the mountain at the first time. And then it started moving down. And it's like a sheer cliff drop off on the side of Sili. And that mountain is just covered in trees. And you can see the light like coming down the mountain and then down into the banana plantation at the base. But the light is like white. It's not an oil lamp, which is yellow. It's fire. But no, it was white. And it wasn't like a white of a flashlight, but it was like a dim mist light. And as soon as he saw that, he turned around, he looked at the graves where my great grandparents are buried, and he just says a few words under his breath and tells me and my mom, you know, get him back in the house. And we walk back in the house and close the door. And I'm like, Dad, aren't we supposed to go fishing? He's like, no, not tonight. And long story, even longer, I never went fishing. He ended up sneaking off like the next day, and he went fishing by himself, came back with all kinds of fish. And I was pretty bummed about it. But yeah, that was like one of those stories where I was like, man, I think I saw a ghost. But even then, I'm like, I think you don't give it power if you don't believe it. So I've always been of the mind that if they're there, they're there. But you leave me alone, I leave you alone.
When you were talking about the moon, I thought you were going to say, and then my dad looked and he turned and he saw my full moon. You
He's like, why are there 2 moons out tonight?
I thought you were leading us into that. I was like, this guy.
Hey, you like my story though? It was good storytelling ability.
That's a good story.
Oh yeah.
How about you, T? Do you believe in spirits or ghosts?
So I am a man of science too. Like, if anything, these last 3 years tell us how science is on top of the world and on top of everything. No, I'm just kidding. I digress. I know that type of science is driven by some different type of agenda, but I believe in spirits. It's too much in my life that's happened to deny the existence or the possibility. Even just you drive past El Cepo over here, and you know I feel some sort of connection, some sort of spiritual presence. You know, even though we're not exactly Hawaiian blood. And the people that came over from Hawaii were, of course, Hawaiian to help the church. You know, I feel like a strong presence, a strong connection, and I don't know, that's just part of it. And I mean, there's got to be a balance, right? But of course, we always want explanations, but science doesn't explain everything, and who knows how far science expands, right? It's not just one set of things. The spiritual realm might blend into science later when it comes to investigations. But I mean, like when my aunt was sick and with cancer in New Zealand, and then my mom was telling me how they hired a shaman. I'm like, what? like this man better be, tap dancing on water. You gonna spend the money on this guy? How you gonna believe him? But I don't know. Our not just indigenous, but just the different regions and all the beliefs. They come from something. Sometimes lying to kids when you have to, but then sometimes because stuff is real. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in spirits. But when I say I believe in spirits, like I said earlier, this is where I get to put on my hypocrite hat. And because I go from being Mr. Skeptical when it comes to Bigfoot and stuff, but I do believe in, like I clarified, like within the bounds of my religious beliefs, I do believe in spirits. So that means I do believe in angels. I believe in spiritual visitations. But the reason I say ghosts is I don't believe in like the idea of like somebody was murdered while in a fit of rage, and so their spirit rages on to haunt every person who comes around this specific space or nothing. It's like, in my exact religious beliefs, when you die, your soul then has a destination, your spirit has a destination. You've got work to do in the next life. Then, and other people within the Latter-day Saint beliefs will tell you, because I deal with this. People within my religion will tell me this stuff all the time, that they see ghosts and they talk to dead ancestors. And I'm like, I don't quite buy it personally. I'm not here to deny your specific experiences, but according to the plan, you go to the next world, the spirit world, and other Mormons are going to tell you, oh, but the spirit world is here on earth. I'm like, yes. And we're separated from that spirit world with a veil, so we supposedly believe. And to say that there are gaps and holes in that veil means that God made an imperfect thing that has flaws in it. And it's like, that doesn't happen. So if you see, it's of my belief, if you see a spirit or an ancestor or an angel, it's only because God had a specific purpose for them to come to you, whether that's because of they need to deliver a message, bring inspiration. Who am I to say? No idea. And obviously, like biblically, we read about people who were possessed, and that is in line with my beliefs. But we believe those are spirits of the people who followed Satan, the third of the hosts of heaven that were cast out. Those are not dead ancestors or dead people possessing bodies. Those are disembodied spirits that never had bodies. And so God allows them to do what they do because that is a specific trial meant to test specific people. The thing is that who am I to say who really saw a spirit and who didn't? But I lead with skepticism. Be like, I don't. Are you sure you didn't just imagine that up? Because I gotta feel like if you really saw something like that, it was meant just for you, and there's no way for me to know the truth of it anyways. And so that's where I just kind of turn into a stick in the mud, where I'm like, yeah, all right, I believe in spirits, not ghosts, and it's in a very structured religious viewpoint. That's where it begins and ends for me.
I have a story, especially with my kids. My kids see things, especially at night. But when I got into a car accident in Colorado, at that time, Vanessa was less than a year. We went to the hospital, and you know how hospitals are. People die at hospitals. So we got that vibe when we went to the hospital. I forgot the hospital. It was middle of nowhere. I think it was a city called Morgan. I took my daughter out for a walk. She was fine, happy. Until we got outside, there was little benches. I think there were some flagpoles in front of the hospital. And this hospital was old. It wasn't a new hospital. The old traditional hospitals. And suddenly I looked at my daughter. She started to look up at one of the windows of the hospital. that's when her facial expression and everything changed. She was screaming like bloody murder, like something was scaring her, and it took me a while to calm her down. And at the same time, while that was happening to my daughter, my wife told me her story that she was using the bathroom in the hospital because she was still in the room being seen by a doctor. The lights in the bathroom that she was in was flickering. So I don't know if it was a coincidence that it happened the same time, but yeah, it's different, when your kids, especially at nighttime, they come up to you and say that they see things at night, like a lady dressed in white standing at the doorway. So it makes me think, are kids sensitive to these things? And if you wear glasses, do you see spirits without glasses or with glasses? Those kind of questions pop in mind.
Well, let me tell you one. This one, I completely forgot about it until you brought that up. It's when I was 7th grade. My grandparents went off to Utah during the summer, and they were coming up to Utah to visit my aunt, my mom's sister. And they do it every once in a while. Well, they came up here, and I guess while they were up here, my grandpa got real sick, went to the hospital. Turns out he had skin cancer, and it progressed so rapidly that he didn't make it another 6 months. And so I was in Samoa. My mom was trying to rush and get all these plane tickets done for us to fly out to Utah to go be with him because he couldn't travel down. And she was just rushing so hard because we were trying to make it while he was still alive, and he was on his deathbed and everything. Well, he ended up passing away, and I got the news that day. We missed our flight. I think we were doing non-rev and trying to fly standby, and we didn't make it on the flight. So my dad ended up my grandpa passed away, and he's the one I'm named after. So that night, we're all sad and crying at home or whatever, and that was my first real experience with death. But that night we all went to bed, and we were in Tafuna, and my grandpa's house is in Pango. And my sister, we were in Pango. Yeah, my sister, she was real little at the time. I think she was like 3 or 4. Decides to, she was 3. So she decides in the middle of the night, she wakes up, goes out the door, and starts walking down the street. My parents wake up because she slept in the room with my parents, and my sister's gone. And so they're freaking out, and they're like, well, where is she? And they're looking, and this is like 3 or 4 in the morning. And my dad jumps in the car, starts driving down the street, following the path. And he finds her. She's walking along the street on the sidewalk, just cruising along. And my dad's freaking out. He's crying. My mom's crying. He picks her up, and he's like, where were you going? And my sister looks up at him, and he's like, oh, I'm going to Papa's house. I'm with Papa. We're going to his house. And my parents freaked out about it, came back. And then I didn't know what happened until a couple years later when my sister or my older sisters and my aunts were talking about it. Hey, remember that time? And I'm like, I remember when Adrena went missing. Shout out to my little sister, Adrena. I was like, yeah, I remember when she went missing. Everybody freaked out, but I didn't know that that was the whole story. So, it's kind of cool. And she was like, according to my mom, she had no fear. It's the middle of the night. There's dogs. In Samoa, the dogs roam wild. And if you don't have a stick or a rock, you can get bit. Those dogs bite. But yeah, she just walked by herself. She was perfectly fine. And she said she was going with Papa. It's Papa's house. And so ghosts aren't real unless it's my family. Then those are good ghosts. They'll protect me.
Yeah, that reminded me of a story that I was told. One of Samantha's uncles. If you know this guy, you would know that he has no reason to lie or make up things. So one of his good friends was lying in the hospital, basically at his deathbed. I believe he was dying of also cancer. But he was on his way to go see him one last time. But then he received a phone call from that guy that he was supposed to see he caught up with him, said goodbyes, but he was still on the way to go see him. Then he received a phone call from the sister. The sister was informing him that her brother had already passed away like a few days ago. So he received a phone call from someone who died a few days ago, and he was talking to him like how I would, like how we're talking on the phone. So he didn't express to me how he felt about that, but to him, he was grateful that he was able to talk to his good friend one last time and get that communication and tell each other how they felt, even though he had already passed a few days ago, which was, weird. But that's the story I was told. Oh, and one more thing. Do you guys believe in sleep paralysis? Have you guys even experienced what sleep paralysis is? When you wake up, your body is not responding. You think that something is smothering you, because I've experienced that.
That's called a hangover. And you drink entirely too much the night before, and you wake up and you can't move.
Not when you're a high schooler.
You can't breathe. So I'm talking about high school.
I've experienced that a few times in high school, and maybe a few times when I'm an adult. and your mind is awake, but your body can't.
Let's go to
move.
a meeting. I've heard a lot of stories like that. Family members, friends, acquaintances, where they experience like sleep paralysis, and not only that, there's some kind of presence felt, in the room, and not a good presence. And those kind of stories freak me out. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I wish I wake up and see something dark, just hovering over my body. I'll swing. I'd probably miss and, get sliced up by evil demon knives or whatever. But those, just hearing that kind of freaks me out. And because there's a couple instances where people express this, but there were witnesses, or at least a witness in the room too that could see it. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Well, but you guys are good people and I'm the bad guy. So why are you experiencing this? And well, sucks to be you guys.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Michael Tan showed you a picture of my foot. When I was a little kid, I got hit by a car. And I don't remember a lot from the accident. I was almost 5 when I got hit. I ran over, got pulled underneath the car, tumbled, knocked out, completely all messed up. And I can still remember it. When I was out for almost a whole day while they were working on me. And I remember sitting on a log in an open field. It's like an open clearing, grass clearing, and there's a fallen dead tree, pretty big tree, and I'm surrounded by woods in a circle, and I'm just sitting on this log, and I'm calling for my mom and dad, and I can hear my mom's voice, I can hear my dad calling me, but I couldn't leave this tree, and I sat there up until I woke up. And when I finally woke up, I was like, where am I and all that other stuff. And I don't remember a lot after that. Even my stay in the hospital, I was in the hospital for like almost a month. But I still remember that tree. It's just a fallen log in the middle of an open clearing surrounded by woods. Because in where I used to live in Fatu, there was a lot of trees around us. It was right by the airport area. But it was the same thing that happened to my dad. He tells me all the time, when he got into his accident here, it was in Ogden. He was up at McCady Hospital here in Ogden, and he kept telling us, like, when he was laying there, after the accident, took him by ambulance to the hospital, he was partially paralyzed from the neck down. And he remembers floating above his body, and he can see himself, and he was trying to tell himself, to move or anything like that. And then he kept, going further and further away from his body. And eventually he got sucked back in and he woke up. And it was just like, And he was like, oh, it's my out of body experience. And I'm like, I mean, that's literally what it sounds like. But he was like, yeah, I could see in the operating room. I saw the paramedics. I saw everybody, and I could see me laying there with tubes in my face and all that stuff, but I just couldn't get to it. And I couldn't move and all that stuff. And then eventually, my mom approved like a procedure that wasn't really, it was still in the testing phase. It wasn't really FAA approved, but it worked and it saved him. So it brought him back because he went to cardiac arrest and all that other stuff.
So it was you that got hit by a car. Now, because I got hit by a car too at about the same age, 5, 6. There's a lady in our neighborhood that was good friends with my mom. My mom said like she would get irritated because this lady would speed, through the parking lot, the carport area. So I'm out with my mom. I think we're taking the trash out or something. And then we're heading back, and all of a sudden, the neighbor lady just zooms by, backing up real fast. And then car hits me. I don't even remember anything when the car hit me. I just remember waking up underneath the car, just crying out for my mom. And then I didn't need a... So with that unexplainable thing, I got a scar on the front of my foot, my right foot from it. But
hey, we could be twins. Mine's on the left.
No,
I actually had a skin graft. It was so bad. They reattached my tendons. My all of my toes except the big toe doesn't work. Like I can kind of push down a little bit, but I can't move them up. They don't move. I have no feeling in that part of my leg or my foot.
Also, you Mr. Deeds.
Yeah. I am.
And for our listeners, if you see Johnny's foot, imagine an episode of Walking Dead.
Yeah, my pet name from my grandma. She used to call me Vaikaya growing up. And
no damage to my back area though, nothing else. Just
the foot, huh?
Yeah, no, nothing horrible. So that's kind of like, God's watching over you, boy, because it's not the only thing, but that's kind of funny that it's not funny, but it's
no, it's pretty funny. In hindsight, it's hilarious. This was years ago. So yeah. I mean, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I have they took skin from my left thigh and put it over my ankle, so I have quad power in my left foot.
Well, were you hit by a car, Spence? Because I wasn't hit by a car. I hit a deer, but I don't know if it's the same feeling.
I've not been hit by a car, so my toughness hasn't been tested like you guys. So we don't know if I'm built Ford tough or not.
I'm pretty sure the car won in both of our instances.
I think these guys just have bad evasion skills.
Yeah,
to avoid the car. Yeah.
But going back to sleep paralysis and whatnot, that's actually a concept that would always freak me out. Not exactly sleep paralysis, but that makes me think of night terrors, because I remember hearing about night terrors, and like I saw this little documentary on it that had me always nervous. It says like in night terrors you will be completely paralyzed. You'll think you're awake and that it's not a dream, but it will absolutely seem every bit as real. And they were trying to say this is why a lot of people think they got possessed by a demon or abducted by a UFO and tested and all that stuff. Is probably actually a night terror, but they're going to swear up and down it's real, because that's the point of a night terror. It doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like you're awake. But what freaked me out is that in the documentary, they're like, every person will experience a night terror at least once in their life, statistically. And I was like, oh man. So actually going back to what Johnny said earlier about belief in something might even give it power or whatnot. And it's like, that's what would freak me out when I was more superstitious, like when I saw The Grudge or something. It's like, even if this thing isn't exactly real, me being so freaked out by it will empower Satan to make it real or something like that. It's like, I just thought for sure there was going to be some time where I would experience something like that. Luckily, I don't believe I've ever had a night terror or sleep paralysis. Actually, really quick, since this made me go down the whole rabbit hole, I Googled it, just asking all-knowing Google if night terrors and sleep paralysis are the same. Apparently, they're not exactly the same. It says night terrors come out of slow wave sleep that occurs in the early part of the night. This deep sleep makes the affected child difficult to arouse. In sleep paralysis, which may often occur toward the morning, the persistence of REM sleep into wakefulness results in the characteristic symptoms. So, I don't know. It takes place at different stages of the sleep cycle, I guess, but sounds like the symptoms are pretty similar.
This is Salem witch trials all over again. Here comes science ruining a good story.
Yeah, I don't know, because when it happened to me, it happened all sorts of times, and like T said, I sense a very strong presence that's not supposed to be there. And I've heard it from other people that when we're in the same room, they try to wake me up, but their body couldn't move. So I don't know. It's when you're sensing something evil, and you just can't move. Your mind and your eyes are open, but you can't move. So that's my experience. It's a scary feeling not being able to control your body, especially when you sense in a way danger, and you're trying to use everything within your strength and body and try to wake yourself up, but it's your body's just not functioning the way it's supposed to.
If you want a night terror, get a picture of Johnny's foot. Look at it right before you go to sleep.
This is true. But if you look at it enough, it'll condition you, and then you'll just be prepared for everything else. Because my wife and kids are so used to that foot. But recap the episode. I know we talked about mythologies, we talked about spirits, we talked about ghosts and superstitions, things that we've experienced, our own beliefs on it as well. And shout out to Ray Keller and insurance. If you're going to be if the spirits is the effect of the afterlife,
independent island life insurance.
Yes. And if insurance, or if spirits is going to be the after effect of death, then don't let your death to the living be a burden. Get that life insurance. Everybody's complaining about falavlavas. Everybody wanting help with this and that. Life insurance will make sure it scratches that itch all the time. Same thing with Matai watches. It's part of our heritage. It's a part of what we. It signifies something by our people for ourselves. Us Pacific Islanders, you and I, and we are the target audience. And it's a good timepiece. Ian Tongi's wearing one, so everybody should go out and do it. But at the same time, just to cap this off, I'll leave you with this. Since Michael Tan wanted to shout out Owa like that, like it's like this is a whole big thing. I'll tell you, this is straight off of the National Park of American Samoa's website. So this is the National Park Service, and this is the Samoan mythological view, the origin of the world. So the main god in Samoan mythology is Tangaloa. His name is Tangaloa. And so before the islands were formed, I'm paraphrasing here, there was the ocean and the sky. And Tangaloa looked down in the ocean and decided to make somewhere for him to rest. And he created the island of Manua.
Oh.
They call it the Valley of Kings.
Oh.
So... yeah, so he created the island of Manua, and he really liked it, but then he wanted more islands, so he also created another island, and he called it Savai'i. And then he created a few more and called it he didn't call it that. He created a bunch of other islands too. And then he noticed that the distance between Savai'i and Manua was so far, so he created a smaller island in the middle, and he named that one Tutuila. And Tutuila was supposed to be the island of repose. It's where you go to rest as you travel between the two. Manua, the island of kings, and Savai'i. And then he gave birth to the worms, and he saw that the worms had no mouth, no arms, no legs, no teeth, and stuff like that. So he created them. He gave them hands and feet and legs and eyes to see and mouths and stuff. And then they became man. And so he created a man and a woman. And then he decided that he was going to turn that man and woman into kings. The word is tui. And so he made, so he had a man and a woman, named them Sa and Wai'i, and they ruled over the island of Savai'i. And then he made one for U and Polu, and they ruled over Polu, became known as Upolu. And then he also made one called Tutu and Ila, and then that's where the island of Tutuila got its name. And he also made another man and woman named To and Nga, and then that's where the island of Tonga came from. And then the other one was Fi and Ti, so it came the island of Fiti, which is Fiji. And then let's see. And then when he created these kings, he created the titles for these kings. And the titles are Tui Ngae, Tui Ta'u, Tui Ofu, Tui Olosenga, Tui Atua, Tui Ana, and Tui Tonga, and Tui Fiti. And those were the sitting titles for the kings of those respective islands. And then when he all decided that, or after he looked at everything was said and done, he decided to go back to his home in Manua. And so he had a son. He selected his son Po, and his his other son Ao. Po and Ao. Po means night in Samoan, and Ao means day. And they were going to be the king of kings. And so they had a son that was born, and he was given the name Satia Ile Moa Atua, which means attached by the abdomen. That's why the whole island group was called, domain received the name Samoa, which means sacred abdomen. And when the child was born, he sustained a great wound when he was ripped from his mother's body. From this came the name of the place of his birth, Manua Tele, the giant wound. When this boy grew to manhood, he became the king of all kings, Tui, and his title was Tui Manua Moa Atua. And so Samoa is named after the sacred abdomen. But
all this just to highlight Manua. Wow.
Manua is the Valley of Kings. That's where the true title, Tui Manua Moa Atua.
And you know where these kings go to shower?
Aua.
They go to shower at Aua, the rainmaker. So, man, I'm sorry, listeners, that you had to listen to all that.
Just
Manua
so you know, this is a proven fact. It's on the website that's sponsored by the government. It's a series of stories orated to anthropologists, and they wrote it down and made a record of it. So it's all true because it's on the internet, so it's true, right?
All right.
So just so you guys know, eu sou perila in Manua Tele.
Well, that's some awesome history to learn. And just for all our listeners out there, if we freaked you out with these ghost stories, just relax and just go to Spotify, because I heard that Ian Tongi and James Blunt will chase the monsters away. So that got just pop that on. You'll be able to have good dreams and you'll be fine.
Longest wrap up ever.
I just had to throw that out there just to make sure that we covered this as an episode on mythologies and superstitions and the creation of the world by his son.
That's the mythology.
Yeah. I know Valley of Skulls.
That just stomped out my Bigfoot story.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this edition of Behind the Lava Lava and the History of Manua by Johnny. For all our historians out there, if you feel like we got some things wrong, feel free to shoot us a message and join us on the podcast and school us on some of the myths and legends and make it accurate and more interesting. But other than that, like, comment, subscribe on all platforms that stream. Hey, thanks for joining us again. I'm your host, Fatu and Futi. Have a good night.